Some Jamaican elections were decided by just 3 votes. Others flipped entire parishes that were unbeatable for 30 years, and in at least one case, the winner only sat in Parliament for 6 months before a judge kicked them out. Every Jamaican parish has a secret, stories you have never heard, moments the history books forgot. Today, we are bringing them back to light. And before we dig into your parish's story, here's something you can do. Drop a comment right now if you remember any strange, shocking, or unforgettable election moment in your lifetime, local or national. You might just see it featured in a future video. Now, let's begin the journey. 28 facts, 14 parishes, stories that shaped the vote. Kingston, the narrow path of Manly. In 1967, a young Michael Manley nearly lost Kingston Central by just 43 votes. That's all it would have taken to erase the career of a man who'd go on to become one of Jamaica's most powerful prime ministers, the JLP's fortress. For 43 straight years, Edward Seaga held Kingston Western. Since 1962, the PNP has never reclaimed that seat. It's one of the strongest one-party strongholds in Jamaica's history. St. Andrew, 105% turnout. In 1976, St. Andrew Southern recorded 105% voter turnout. Yes, more people voted than were registered. That election was held under a state of emergency, and this seat exploded in size overnight. Norman Manley's early defeat. Jamaica's founding father, Norman Manley, lost his first election in St. Andrew Easton in 1944. It wasn't until 1949 that he entered Parliament. St. Catherine, the Queen of Close Calls. Phyllis Mitchell ran 4 times in St. Catherine Northeast. She won 2, she lost 2, and every race was decided by just a few hundred votes. That seat became the very definition of a marginal. Married to the people. Enid Bennett served as MP for 30 straight years, becoming the longest-serving female MP in Jamaica at the time. Her supporters symbolically married her to her constituency in 1997. That's how deep her roots ran. Clarendon. Rise and fall of a giant. In Clarendon Northwestern, Edwin Allen beat PNP's Dr. Percival Minot by over 1,000 votes in 1967. But 5 years later, Allen barely held on, and by 1976, Minot beat him by 34 votes. Hugh Shearer's 4-vote escape. Former Prime Minister Hugh Shearer won his final election in 1989 by just 4 votes. 4. He was defeated in the very next election. Manchester. The MP who lasted 6 months. In 1944, Wendell Benjamin won Manchester Southern, or so he thought. A recount and court case flipped the result after 6 months, declaring Lawton Bloomfield the real winner. Manley versus the courts. In 1972, Douglas Manley won Manchester Southern. But 2 years later, the court overturned it after finding ballot tampering. That seat changed hands not by a vote, but by a judge. St. Elizabeth. The never-ending rivalry. Danny Buchanan and Derek Sangster went head-to-head in St. Elizabeth Southwest. Buchanan won 4 times, all by tight margins, including a 117-vote win in 2002. Like father, like son. Danny's son, Hugh Buchanan, won the same seat in 2011 by just 13 votes. Southwest St. Elizabeth might be the most suspenseful seat in Jamaica. Westmoreland, when P.J. Patterson fell. In 1980, future Prime Minister P.J. Patterson lost his seat in Westmoreland Easton during a landslide defeat, one of the most shocking upsets ever. Fortress falls in 2020. The JLP flipped Westmoreland Western in 2020 for the first time in 30 years, defeating Wycombe McNeill. PNP country was no longer so safe. Hanover. D.K. Duncan's return. After years away from politics, D.K. Duncan returned and won Hanover Eastern in 2007 by just 10 votes. Legal battles followed, but he held on. The birthplace of a hero. Sir Alexander Bustamante was born in Hanover, but never represented it in Parliament. He always ran in Kingston. St. James, the first woman MP. Iris Collins of the JLP became Jamaica's first ever female MP in 1944, elected from St. James Northwest, a 40-vote win. Also in 1944, Robert Macfarlane won St. James Southeast by just 40 votes. The seat flipped back and forth for decades after that. Trelawny, when an independent won. In a 1947 by-election, independent candidate Cecil Neater won Trelawny Southern, one of the last true independents to ever take a seat. Titus versus Wakeland. Their rivalry in Trelawny North was legendary. In 1967, Wakeland barely held on by 191 votes. St. Anne, a 3-vote record. In 1993, Neville Gallimore won St. Anne Southwest by just 3 votes, the smallest margin in Jamaican history. The first opposition leader, Dr. Ivan Lloyd of St. Anne East, became the first ever leader of the opposition in Parliament after the 1944 election. Norman Manley hadn't entered Parliament yet. St. Mary, a 5-vote decision. In 2016, Winston Green won Southeast St. Mary by 5 votes. A magisterial recount confirmed the result, where one seat can flip a country. In the 2017 by-election, Norman Dunn's victory gave the JLP the edge in Parliament after one of the closest by-elections in Jamaican memory. Portland, 30 years unbeaten. Leopold Lynch held Portland West from 1944 to 1976. He never lost an election in over 30 years. A historic flip in 2019. Anne-Marie Vaz beat Damien Crawford in Portland East, ending the PNP's 30-year hold. She and her husband, Darrell Vaz, became the first MP couple in Parliament. St. Thomas. Violet's close call. In 1972, Violet Thompson almost made history in St. Thomas Central, but lost by 121 votes. One of the closest races of that era. St. Thomas Weston, JLP forever. That seat has voted JLP in all but 2 elections since 1944. A true one-party stronghold. All this talk about big parties, big names, but some of Jamaica's most powerful elections were decided by people who never made the news, like the 3-vote victory, the 4-vote escape, the 5-vote recount. So here's a truth bomb. Your vote really does matter. And in Jamaica, it always has. 4 bonus facts. Fact 1. Iris Collins, elected in 1944, also worked on her family's farm while serving in Parliament. She'd attend debates during the week and cut cane on weekends. Fact 2. The 1980 general election saw over 800,000 voters, but some 600 people were killed in the violence leading up to it. Fact 3. Clarendon once had 3 sitting MPs in Parliament who were all named Allen, but only one was related to the actual Edwin Allen. Fact 4. In the 2020 election, over 28 seats flipped, the highest since the 1980 landslide. In some cases, entire parishes went from one color to the next overnight. Jamaica's election stories are more than numbers. They are about families, communities, pride, and survival. Every vote is a heartbeat. Every seat is a legacy. If you learned something new today, subscribe to this channel, Impacting Jamaica, and drop a comment. What's the most unforgettable thing you remember from a Jamaican election, at home or abroad? Let's build history together.